Hi guys, Nyasha here from Nyasha Keys, and today I'll be bringing you another video from my beginner series. This is actually the second lesson in this video series, and if you haven't watched the previous one, I highly recommend that you give it a go. Link is in the description below, and if you need the notes for these lessons, you can actually get them on my website. That's www.nyashakeys.com. Okay, so in this video we'll be looking at scales. Here we go. So before I start, I just want to mention that this is probably going to be a long video, as you can probably see in the length already, but it is by far the most important topic in music, especially for keyboard players. It is the most important topic. I would, like, for everything I know, if I was to choose one thing to remember and I was to forget everything else, I would remember scales, because they're that important. So I just want to give you some context to be like, you know what, scales are the basis on which everything is built. And so when you approach this video, you need to approach it with that understanding that this is some really important stuff. If you really understand this and you really get these concepts, you'll be set up for success as a keyboard player. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, before I actually look at scales, I'd like to just look at some intervals. Intervals. So this is sort of like a side note. Right. Now, intervals, the way we know intervals is the same as in music as well. Interval is the gap, right, or the distance between 2 points. So an interval is the musical distance. So this is musical distance between any two notes. That's an interval, right? So for instance, between this note and this note, let me come a bit towards the middle of this thing, right? Between this note and this note, there's an interval that exists, right? Between this note and this note, there's an interval that exists, right? Between this note and this note, there's an interval. There's an interval, and as I move, as I increase the distance, the interval becomes bigger, right? That's an interval. 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 So when these two notes are pressed, same time, there's an interval. That's the interval, and then now the interval is getting smaller, right? So there are actually a lot of intervals that are there. It can be it's actually a deep topic, to be honest, but I'm not going to go. This is not a lesson on intervals. There's another lesson on intervals in a different course, but this is not a lesson on intervals. This is just to show you that intervals exist. Okay, so we're gonna look at two intervals. The first one is gonna be called a semitone. In brackets, we can just call that a half step. The second one is going to be called a tone, which can be called a whoa step. Okay, there are two intervals I'm going to look at, right? So what is a semitone? A semitone, or a half step, is the distance in pitch between a note and its nearest neighbor. Okay, so a semitone or a half step is the distance in pitch between a note and its nearest neighbor. So the key note there is nearest neighbor. That's the distance in pitch between a note and its nearest neighbor. So for instance, we have got a note here. Its nearest neighbor is this one. The nearest neighbor, the source is this one. So you've got two neighbors. Remember, you've got your left neighbor, your right neighbor, or in this case, your flat and your sharp neighbor, right? So this F, now the distance in pitch, right, or musical distance, there, the distance which exists in between these two notes is the semitone, right? This one, distance which exists here is the semitone. So a semitone is the distance in pitch between a note and its nearest neighbor. So for instance, if this is a note, I'll use, and if this is a note, and if this is a note, right? If this is a musical note, and this is a musical note, and this is a musical note, right? The nearest neighbor to this note would be this one. So the distance which exists between these two notes is what we call a semitone. So I'm going to call this a semitone, right? I'm going to use S for semitone. And for semitone, I'm going to use the term S. And this one, the distance between its nearest neighbor, this is the nearest neighbor to this one. So that's S, right? Now, this is a semitone. Okay? These are notes, or they are keys on your keyboard, right? Now, a tone or a whole step is an interval of two semitones or half steps added together. So the distance from here to here would be called a tone. From here all the way to here, or from here all the way to, it's just the interval or the distance. So for instance, if you've got two notes, right, from here to here is a semitone, from here to here is a semitone, and therefore from here to here is a tone. Okay, let's go again. Let's say we've got A, right? From A to A sharp is a semitone, from A sharp to B is a semitone, therefore from A to B is a tone. One way of looking at tones and semitone is to skip a note. There's a shortcut, so you can say skip a note. Okay, here you can say don't skip a note. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's say we are here, let's say we're on E, right? To go a semitone up, okay, a semitone up from E, we don't skip a note. Then you've got a semitone up, and then the interval in between these two is called a semitone. To go a tone up from E, you skip a note. So you skip this and you press this, then you've got a tone up. Okay, so now that we know about tones and semitones, we can start looking at scales. So generally speaking, what is a scale? Okay, so a scale in general is a specific arrangement of notes with a distinct pattern of tones and semitones, right? So when you've got a distinct pattern of tones and semitones, and then you put together notes using that pattern, then you bring about a scale. So I'll give you an example. Let's talk about the chromatic. Right? The chromatic scale, it's a very easy scale. It just consists of semitones, right? So this one, you just use semitones. Actually, let me say S will be for semitones, and T will be for tones. T will be for tones. S for semitones, T for tones, right? S, chromatic scale. So what does that mean? We're just gonna come in and say, and then semitone up, then semitone up, then semitone up, then semitone up, and you're gonna keep going. Semitone, 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 and we're back to C. Started on C, ended on C. Okay. Then you've got the chromatic scale. Let's try the D chromatic scale, I guess, starting from D. Okay, so I started on D, ended on D, and I played every note there because every note is separated from its neighbor by a semitone. Okay. Another scale we could use is the whole tone scale. This one just consists of tones. So for instance, and we're gonna go up the scale, up scale, so that will be tone. From here, you skip this note, press this one. 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 Okay, that is called the whole tone scale. Now this here is going to be the most important scale that you will ever know, and that is the major scale. The major scale, and the formula for the major scale is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. This is the magic formula right there. Once you understand this you have to memorize. You need to know it like the back of your hand. This is the magic formula, all right? So when we use this formula to make a scale, let's say we want to make the major scale. Okay, let's do that. Okay, let's say we start from this note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, we can literally start from anywhere, use this formula, and we have that major scale sound. And when we come back down, we use the reverse of the formula. So there'll be semitone, tone, 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 semitone, tone, tone. But once you know how to go through it this way, coming back, you just remember which notes you pressed, pretty much. Yep. So okay, let's start from a different point. Let's say we start from this note here. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. That would be and you get that same sound from a different starting point. So you have your first note, tone, second note, tone, okay, third note, semitone, fourth note, tone, fifth note, tone, sixth note, tone, seventh note, semitone, and then back to your first note. Okay, so you start from here. Okay, use a tone to get to your next note. Use a tone, get to the next note. Use a semitone, get to the next note. Use a tone, next note, next note, next note, next note. And so the tones and semitones tell you how to move to the next step. How to move to the next step. Are you going to use a small step or a big step? Are you going to use a half step or a whole step? Are you going to not skip a note, or are you going to skip a note? Okay, this is it. Okay, so let's build a couple of major scales, right? Let's start off by writing down the formula. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Right? We start off with C. That's usually our starting point. C, tone. So that would give me. So you start off by pressing the note. You start off by pressing the note, then you go tone, tone, semitone. You can see here's a semitone, tone, 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 and then semitone. Okay, that is your C major scale. C major scale. Let's choose another one. And then before I go anyway, let's just quickly say each note in the major scale can be given a number. So then this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, just as a side note, this will be useful a bit later. And what I'm actually gonna do, I'm actually gonna write the formula like this: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, so that it's in between. That way you can see that between C and D is a tone, between D and E is a tone, between E and F is a semitone, so it's the gap in between. F and G is a tone, 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 semitone. Alright, let's choose another one. Random. Let's go for E. Right? E. Tone. Okay. It's an F sharp. Tone. Semitone. Tone. Tone. That's an E. Okay, so we've got E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay, let's choose another random one. B flat. Okay, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, so that's your okay. Let's choose another one. Okay, so that's G. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Okay, so these are just examples. So that's the C major scale, so that's the E major scale, that's the B flat major scale, that's the G major scale. Got a bit lazy at the end there. Okay, and then it goes on and on, right? So why don't you pause this video and write all the 12 major scales, and in a moment I'll put the answer for all 12 major scales there for you. Okay, so those are the major scales. Okay, at this stage I won't expect you to know them off by heart because you've just learned them, but it would be good for you to just know how to make them. So maybe this you'd know off by heart, and maybe this you'd know off by heart. So that would be the C major scale, which is really easy because it comprises only of the white notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Doesn't use any of the black notes. As you can see, it doesn't have sharps or flats. Remember, the black notes are the ones with sharps and flats, so it doesn't use any of those. So knowing the formula off by heart: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, and knowing the first sort of scale that we looked at, which is the C major scale, off by heart, that will help you to proceed to the next level. However, you should make for yourself a table with all the 12 major scales. Look at it and start learning them. Those will take a while to get through, but you will know how to make them and memorize them, know them off by heart, and that will be good for you. All right. same sound from a different starting point. Okay,